Oh, hello, YouTube. I'm back again for season 2 of Mayfair Witches. Bow, 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 bow. And by the way, if you're wondering why I sound terrible, it's because I'm very sick. But here we are talking about witches. Good times, everybody. Season 2 of Mayfair Witches is primarily going to be based on the book Lasher. Now, the thing about Lasher is that it's basically unfilmable because, I don't know, the only way to describe the book is sexual terror all the time. It's just there's torture and sexual assault for like 600 pages. Let's see what horrors are in store for us this season, okay? So the episode begins with Rowan and baby Lasher. They're back at the Mayfair house, and Lasher is growing super fast. It's like every day he seems to grow like about 3 years, and he just keeps demanding milk, and like honestly, it's like a whole thing in the book. He's like really into breast milk in the book, and it's uncomfortable. And Rowan has been like taking all of these like measurements and keeping a steady eye on Lasher this whole time because she's, a scientist. She's a neurosurgeon. She is scientifically trying to figure out what the fuck is going on here. And that's a little similar to the book, because in the book, Rowan and Lasher run away to Europe, actually. They don't go back to the Mayfair house. And mainly because Rowan wanted to take him away from everyone else so she could study him. And the only other big difference here is that when Lasher is born, he like immediately turns into like a full-grown man baby. And I know that sounds strange, but like think about it. He comes from baby all the way into man body, but he still has like newborn baby hairless skin. And he's a full-grown man baby. It's horrific in the book. So this way, it's a little less horrific to see him just jump through ages. But Rowan, through all of her science and research and all of these things, she can't figure out what the hell is going on with Lasher. She doesn't understand. So she's trying to find answers anywhere she can. She calls over Dolly Jean, and she's like, hey, what's going on here? And Dolly Jean is just very kind of laissez-faire about it. She's like, well, I guess he's something new. I don't know what's going on. But the thing is, in the books, Dolly Jean 100% would know what's going on, because Dolly Jean's side of the Mayfairs, they live in like the swamp, the bayou. And there has been several walk-in babies that have happened throughout the years. She's kind of a midwife. So she has seen other babies like this before. But in the show, they're either making it sound like she doesn't know, or maybe she's just withholding information. But anyway, Dolly Jean isn't any help to Rowan. So Rowan's like, okay, I'm going to have to go start reading these journals from the previous Mayfair witches, see there's something in there about Lasher's nature. And she opens up like Catherine Mayfair's journal to start off with, and she reads like one sentence before we get interrupted. So like, here's a little TLDR about Catherine, since we don't get any of the backstory here. So Catherine Mayfair was Julian Mayfair's sister, and like a lot of the times in like scholarly research about them, she's like the most unimportant Mayfair witch, because she wanted nothing to do with witchcraft or Lasher or any of that. She just wanted to live her life and be normal. And it's actually Catherine and Julian and their other brother, which I forget his name right now, but they are all actually the ones who built the Mayfair house back in the day. And Catherine fell in love with the architect who was building the house, and she ends up marrying him, and they have several children. Most of the children they have, though, die like in infancy. So she's not doing well mentally. And then after all of these like child deaths, her husband gets really sick and dies like really quickly. So Catherine loses her mind. She doesn't know what's going on anymore. So she calls her brother Julian to come comfort her. So Julian, he comes and he moves into the Mayfair house. And then, wouldn't you know, like about 11 months after her husband died, she gives birth to a new baby. So yeah, guess what, everybody? Catherine and Julian made a baby. The Mayfair witches family tree is just a broom handle at this point, okay? It's just, there's not enough branches on it. But anyway, that was important to do because Catherine, while she was the designee, she wasn't really the witch of that generation, and the actual witch of that generation was Julian. He was the only male Mayfair witch. But let's put a pin in that for a second. Let's check in with some other characters. Cyprien, what's he up to? Well, Cyprien has been trying to get back into the Mayfair house to rescue Rowan or get rid of Lasher or something. He doesn't really have an exact plan, but he can't get into the house because there's all these like magical protections and charms on it. And also he's hiding from the Talamasca because he's scared they're going to erase his memory because they didn't want to stop Rowan from having Lasher. So he's hiding out in this motel room. He's leaving clues for himself just in case if his memory does get erased, he can like recover those memories later. So he stops by like his old partner Arjuna's house. He leaves like this book with her that he had like recorded some message for himself in for like safekeeping. And honestly, it was probably just in the nick of time because the Talamasca finds him pretty quickly after that. He goes back to the hotel and boom, Talamasca is already waiting for him there. They knock him out with like purple gases. I don't know what they are, magic gas, I guess, and they capture him. And when Cyprien wakes up, he's in Albrecht's office and he's like, oh no, is my memory erased? Like, what have you done to me? But Albrecht tells him, hey, guess what? I don't want to erase your memory. Like the elders, like those are like the mysterious leaders of the Talamasca, and they allegedly want him to do a covert mission to capture Lasher. And Cyprien reluctantly agrees to this plan. And he's like, I don't know how I'm going to get to Lasher because I can't get in the Mayfair house. And Albrecht says, hey, guess what? I have a workaround for that because there's this other Mayfair and I'm pretty sure she'd be willing to help us. And that new Mayfair is Moira Mayfair. So who's Moira? Let's talk about her for a second. Moira has just showed up in town. She is Tessa's older sister. She is like obviously very sad that Tessa died, and it's kind of Lasher's fault because he abandoned her. So she not a fan of Lasher. She's not into this. She's not like happy he has been born. Even though her own mother is like, it's okay Tessa died because now Lasher's here. It was important. And so already Moira's disgusted with the family. You know, the showrunners have said that Moira is supposed to be the stand-in for Mona Mayfair this season because they're not really going to do the whole Mona Mayfair storyline, which honestly, good. They shouldn't. It's gross, really. So TLDR on Mona. She is a 20-fold witch, which means she is super inbred at this point. Like, I think Julian is her grandfather or other relative like 3 times over. So yeah, it's a mess getting here, but all of that inbreeding has made her into a really, really powerful witch. Honestly, probably more powerful than Rowan. But the thing is, Mona is 13 years old. She's a hyper smart genius and also just incredibly sexually active. It's gross to read in the book. She's having sex with pretty much only adult men. Good news, it's by her own choice, but bad news, ew, that's disgusting. And it's a lot of the book. So we're not even going to do Mona. We have Moira instead. And she's a very different character, but this is going to be our stand-in for her. But let's get back to Rowan. What's going on with her? So she's still looking for clues in the journals. She's opening up new witches' journals. And she opens up Marguerite's journal. Again, she reads like a sentence of it before she gets interrupted. But anyway, here's the TLDR on Marguerite because, oh my God, is she a piece of work. So Marguerite Mayfair was actually Julian Mayfair's mother. And she was like, I don't know, maybe one of the most devoted to and probably in love with Lasher. And she married several different men and had children with them. And all of her husbands usually ended up dying under mysterious circumstances. And she was also known to have a laboratory in the Mayfair house that was full of jars of like body parts. So you kind of get where we're going with this, right? She was full on like Dr. Frankensteining these body parts together so that she would build a body that Lasher could possess, and like his spirit would do some healing to the body, and they were hoping like maybe if he stayed in it long enough it would just come back to life. And it never really worked out. Like maybe a little bit of healing happened in these bodies, but ultimately they were dead bodies and they didn't really last long. However, they did last long enough for Marguerite to have relations with them while Lasher was in the body. So she's up there Dr. Frankensteining and then having sex with the bodies. Marguerite, everybody. She's a real winner out here. But anyway, back to the story. Rowan is reading these journals. She's asking people. Everything's coming up empty. She has no answers about Lasher, why he's here, why he's growing so fast, what is going on. And all the while, Lasher keeps getting bigger. He's walking around yanking out his baby teeth and laughing like a lunatic and turning into a tween already. Like, he's growing real fast. And it does seem that, like, Lasher has some memories of his past, but they're all kind of vague and, like, flickers of them, so he doesn't really remember everything. Lasher is kind of communing with his past witches with the Mayfair doll, which has little bits and pieces of all the Mayfair witches in it. And Rowan asks him, hey, why do you need a body? Can you just tell me what's going on? And Lasher's like, the past witches don't want me to tell you that. So Rowan gets upset by this. She's like, oh, fuck those bitches. So she takes the doll away from him. And he's like, give it back. And she's like, absolutely not, young man. You're in timeout. And he gets upset. So he shoves Rowan really hard. And she's like on the ground. She needs to defend herself. So she sends out like a power wave. And then like it blows up all these windows and mirrors, and all these glass shards hit Lasher and it cuts him. And Rowan immediately is like, oh my God, I didn't mean to actually hurt you. I'm sorry, because this is her child, you know? So she goes over to him and she has all of these new powers that she got when she gave birth to him. So now Rowan can like heal people. So she uses her ability, she heals up Lasher. Rowan now has a bunch of Lasher's blood, so she can actually do scientific tests on it. So Rowan takes the glass, she goes to the hospital, she gets all her samples ready and together, and she calls up her old colleague, this guy named Larkin. And she's like, hey, I need you to run like a genetic diagnostic on these samples I'm going to send you, but you got to do it in secret. It's really important. Now, in the book, Larkin was like a colleague of Rowan's, and she did call him and ask him for help. However, they were only ever colleagues. Like, I think he was much older than her in the book too. But in the show, they're kind of for playing off of this, like, maybe they had a romantic history, and there seems to be some romantic chemistry still there. And then the guy that they picked to play Larkin looks a lot like how they described this character named Michael in the books. And the thing about Michael is that he was Rowan's husband in the books, and he doesn't exist in the show. And he's still not going to exist, but I'm wondering if they're going to do like a Larkin thing and make him into the new Michael. I don't know, but maybe. We'll have to see where the show goes, but I feel like that might be part of it. So while Rowan's leaving the hospital, she comes across this young girl and she has cancer and she's dying. And Rowan does genuinely want to help people and like do good and heal people. So she uses her abilities to like stop the cancer. And so as she's leaving the hospital for real, she runs into her cousin Josephine. Well, actually, after the revelations of last season, we know that Josephine is actually her sister, because we all know what Cortland did. And she's like, hey, I want to help people still. Is the neurosurgeon position still open? She's like, of course. So Rowan's like, all right, I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. So Rowan's trying her best to be a good person, even though she might not be succeeding all the time. So Rowan asks Josephine to come over to the Mayfair house to talk about what's going on with Lasher, because it's a whole bag of worms. And Dolly Jean's already back at the house because she's babysitting him. Although I don't know how much babysitting he necessarily needs, because he's a full-grown teenager now. Mind you, it's still kind of like has a young mind, but is in a teenager body, and has like a lot of memories, but more so fragments. So I don't know. Lasher's going through a bunch. He doesn't know what's going on with himself either. So Rowan and Josephine show up at the house, and Moira's already there. She's trying to get up there to talk to Lasher and be like, hey, what the fuck, bro? You left my sister to die? How dare? And she's pissed off about it. And Rowan's like, oh no, you can't go see him right now. He's a kid. He doesn't remember anything. Why don't you come back at a later date when he's like a little bit older and he can like remember things? Moira ends up leaving the house only to be picked up later by Cyprien. So that whole let's capture Lasher thing is in progress right now. So later that night, Rowan is coming up to see Lasher, bringing him his dinner and his fucking milk that he's really into. She's like, hey, could you please just tell me why you're here? Is it because you want to help people and like help me heal them? Like, are you a good person? And he's like, well, it's not that. He knows kind of why he's here. And then he leans forward real quick because he's trying to kiss Rowan. And Rowan recoils because she's like, ew, you're my son. Don't ever do that again. Like, maybe you don't know better, but like, yikes, don't do that. So in the book Lasher, Rowan and Lasher have a full-on sexual relationship. Ew, I know, right? She gave birth to him. It starts off consensual and then quickly devolves into Lasher, like, literally chaining her to a bed so she can't escape him. Like I said, the book is sexual terror. Yikes, okay? But I don't think they're gonna go that route this time. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. I couldn't take it if they did. But anyway, Rowan is still without answers, and she also has to fight off like sexual advances from Lasher now. And there's nowhere else she could turn to except for the very last person she would ever want to go to for this, and that is Cortland Mayfair. Mind you, at the end of last season, Rowan turned him into a statue because she found out that he was her biological father after assaulting Deirdre. And while his body is a statue, his mind is awake and in kind of like a nightmare space. We don't get too far into it this time. I'm assuming we will get into that more in later episodes. But yeah, she's going to have to go to Cortland eventually. Meanwhile, Lasher's feeling distraught. He's feeling rejected. So he escapes the Mayfair house and he goes off onto Bourbon Street. It's a big party. And he's going around and he's like literally sniffing out a sexual partner because he can kind of identify who he can have sex with by smell. And that means Mayfair women, the only people he can have sex with. However, this goes very poorly because Lasher ends up coming back to the Mayfair house with a very dead woman who is actually Lucy Mayfair, like a lesser known Mayfair witch. Okay, so in the book, this part's about to get a little bit wild, all right? Lasher isn't a demon, he's another species called a Taltos. And the thing with Taltos is that like they're hyper fertile and incompatible with humans. So like if Lasher has sex with a human woman, she will immediately get pregnant and then immediately miscarry and hemorrhage to death every time. And the only people that he can have sex with successfully where like no one dies are other Taltos or very specific witches that have a very specific genetic code. Hence all of the selective breeding that's been happening in the Mayfair line. I won't go any further into Lasher's plan because we're going to get into that in future episodes. But for right now, that's why they're dying. He didn't like kill her on purpose. His just like his penis is a weapon and he's using it poorly. Now Rowan's there with her teenage son who has now killed a girl and she's like, oh my God, I have a dead body I have to deal with now. So she like tricks Lasher into the basement and locks him in there. And then she takes the girl out to the swamp and like uses her powers to like sink her down to the bottom of it. That's how she's hiding the body. But Lasher's still growing and he's getting stronger. So he's in the basement. He finds a window and he like knocks it out. He's able to escape the basement. And then boom, what do you know? Lasher has leveled up once again. And now he is officially grown up, full grown man baby Lasher. He is an adult now and he is on the loose. And that's where the episode ends. Realistically speaking, this isn't maybe the best season opener. Not a lot happened, just a lot of unanswered questions. And even when they were looking for answers, they didn't give us any satisfaction. Because like I was saying when she was reading all the journals, she read like one sentence before she got interrupted. So like, why bring them up? So I don't know. It's not the best opener of a season. But I'm wondering where they are going to go with things because they've changed so much of the book to have it fit the show. And honestly, maybe for the better because a lot of this book, like I said, it's just unfilmable. It's just sexual terror. So maybe they're going to make it slightly less terrible. Maybe we'll get into Lasher's actual backstory. I would love to recap that because, oh my God, is it fucking wild. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But in the meantime, what did you guys think about this episode? Let me know in the comments. What's something you're excited to learn about or what's something you're excited to see in this season? What questions do you want to be answered? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos or a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. I'm gonna go rest because I'm sick. Goodbye.